There is a famous story about three blind men and an elephant. Each of them stands in a different place and touches a different part of the animal. One touches the trunk and thinks the elephant is like a snake. Another touches the leg and thinks it is like a column. The third touches the side and thinks it is like a wall. In a sense, each of them is describing a real elephant, but only from a fragment. Each has his own version, his own partial truth, his own subjective elephant. This image is useful far beyond philosophy. It explains how history itself is often formed. If we take almost any object, event, or period of time, different cultures, religions, classes, schools, and communities will not describe it in exactly the same way. They may agree on dates, names, or external facts, yet the meaning they extract from them will differ. The same sequence of events can become different histories depending on what each group considers central, sacred, shameful, dangerous, or useful. That is why history is never just a list of facts. It is also interpretation. For example, one group may write the history of mechanical looms as a story of industrial progress and human innovation. Another may describe the same event as the history of labor displacement, class suffering, and the destruction of traditional life. The dates may be identical. The meaning will not be. The same thing applies to the history of aesthetics, religion, politics, or conceptual art. The object is one, the narratives are many. This is where secret societies become especially interesting. Secret societies existed in almost every historical period because they usually believed they possessed something distinct, a doctrine, a ritual truth, an interpretation of the cosmos, a political aim, hidden knowledge, or simply a body of ideas they did not want to spread to outsiders. Sometimes this secrecy was defensive, sometimes it was elitist, sometimes it was practical. But in all cases, it produced something important, a parallel version of reality. And once a group develops a parallel version of reality, it also begins to develop a parallel history. That is almost inevitable. A secret order does not simply preserve a few passwords and ceremonies. It preserves its own memory. It creates its own account of origins, its own heroes, its own interpretation of the past, its own list of betrayals, revelations, and turning points. In other words, it constructs a worldview with its own historical backbone. This is why such groups often encode knowledge in ciphers, symbols, metaphors, and ritual language. The point is not only to hide information from outsiders, but to preserve it in a form that is meaningful only to insiders. Even if an outsider gets hold of the text, the deeper significance may still remain inaccessible. The words may be visible, but the world behind them remains closed. Mystery traditions are a good example. Many of them did not merely disagree with popular understandings of cosmology, faith, or creation. They often built alternative versions of them. In some cases, they created parallel myths, parallel sacred genealogies, and parallel accounts of the structure of reality itself. Their history was not simply official history plus secrecy. It was often another architecture of meaning. Christianity offers a useful comparison here. Within Christianity itself, there emerged the concept of heresy. In the simplest sense, heresy meant dissent, deviation from the accepted doctrine. But what is called heresy by one institution may look like truth, correction, or deeper insight to another group. This is why so many apocryphal texts are fascinating. They were real texts, written, copied, discussed, and preserved. Yet they were not included in the official biblical canon. They existed at the edge of authority, carrying versions of Christian memory and metaphysics that the dominant structure chose not to absorb. That is the key point. History is not only preserved, it is filtered. And once filtering begins, alternative histories naturally emerge. This does not happen only in secret orders. Open traditions do the same thing. Religious communities, philosophical schools, political movements, and even academic disciplines all construct histories according to their own priorities. They decide what counts as central, what counts as marginal, what deserves reverence, and what deserves silence. So the question is not really why secret societies study a different history. The better question is why anyone would assume there is only one history in the first place. Of course, this does not mean all interpretations are equally true. That would be lazy relativism. Some interpretations are deeper, more coherent, more honest, and more complete than others. But it does mean that if we want a fuller picture of reality, we cannot limit ourselves to one official version and pretend the work is done.